Sayyid al-Sharif al-Radi, or Sayyid al-Radi as he is commonly called, was an ardent admirer of Ali's speeches. He was a scholar, a poet, and a man of cultivated taste. Al-Tha'alibi, his contemporary, says the following about him. He is the most remarkable man among his contemporaries and the noblest amongst the Sayyids of Iraq. Family and descent aside, he is fully adorned and endowed with literary excellence. He is the most remarkable poet among the descendants of Abu Talib, though there are many distinguished poets among them. To say that of all the tribesmen of Quraysh, no poet could ever surpass him would not be an exaggeration. It was on account of Sayyid al-Radi's earnest love for literature in general, and his admiration of Ali's discourses in particular, that his interest was mainly literary in compiling Ali's words. Consequently, he paid a greater attention to those passages which were more prominent from the literary point of view. This was the reason why he named his anthology Nahjul-Balagha, which means the path of eloquence, giving little importance to mentioning his sources, a point rarely ignored by compilers of hadith. Only at times does he casually mention the name of a certain book from which a particular sermon or epistle has been cited. In a book of history or hadith, it is of primary importance that the sources be precisely identified, otherwise little credence can be given to it. The value of a literary masterpiece, however, lies in its intrinsic beauty, subtlety, elegance, and depth. Meanwhile, it is not possible to assert that Sayyid al-Radi was entirely oblivious of the historical value and other dimensions of this sacred work, or that his attention was exclusively absorbed by its literary qualities.
Fortunately, after Sayyid al-Radi, others took up the task of collecting the Asnad of Nahjul-Balagha. Perhaps the most comprehensive book in this regard is Nahjul Sa'ada fi Mustadrak Nahjul-Balagha by Muhammad Bakr al-Mahmudi, a distinguished Shia scholar of Iraq. In this valuable book, all of Ali's extant speeches, sermons, decrees, epistles, supplications, and sayings have been collected. It includes Nahjul-Balagha and other discourses which were not incorporated by Sayyid al-Radi or were unavailable to him. Apparently, except for some aphorisms, the original sources of all the contents of Nahjul-Balagha have been accounted for. It should be mentioned that Sayyid al-Radi was not the only man to compile a collection of Ali's utterances. Others too have compiled various books with different titles in this field. The most famous of them is Gurar al-Hikam wa Durar al-Kalim by al-Amudi, on which Muhakkik Jamal ad-Din al-Khunsari has written a commentary in Persian, which has been recently printed by the University of Tehran through the efforts of the eminent scholar Mir Jalal ad-Din, the al-Urumawi traditionist. Ali al-Jundi, Dean of the Faculty of Sciences at the Cairo University, in the introduction to the book titled Ali ibn Abi Talib, Sharuh wa Hikam, cites a number of these collections, some of which have not yet appeared in print and still exist as manuscripts. These include Dastur Ma'alim al-Hikam by al-Khudai, the author of al-Khutats, Nathar al-Lali, which has been translated and published by a Russian Orientalist in one bulky volume, and Hikam Sayyidina Ali, a manuscript of which exists in the Egyptian library, Dar al-Kutub al-Misriya. Since the earliest times, two distinct merits have been recognized as distinguishing Ali's discourses. Firstly, literary elegance and eloquence. Secondly, their characteristic multidimensional nature. Any of these two qualities suffices for regarding Ali's words as valuable, but the combination of these two qualities, matchless eloquence, literary elegance, and their multidimensional nature, in that they deal with diverse and occasionally incompatible spheres of life, has made it almost miraculous. For this reason, Ali's speech enjoys a status in between the speech of the human being and the word of Allah. Indeed, it has been said of it that it is above the speech of beings and below the word of the Creator. Radi was entirely oblivious of the historical value and other dimensions of this sacred work, or that his attention was exclusively absorbed by its literary qualities.
This aspect of Nahjul-Balagha requires no introduction. Any reader of a cultivated literary taste, one capable of appreciating linguistic elegance and charm, surely realizes it. Basically, beauty is something perceived and experienced, and not described or defined. Nahjul-Balagha, even after nearly 14 centuries, has retained the same attractiveness, freshness, charm, and beauty for the present-day audience that it provided the people of earlier days. Here, we do not intend to give an elaborate proof of this claim. Nevertheless, as a part of our discourse, we shall briefly describe the marvelous power of the words of Ali in moving hearts and infusing them with the feeling of wonder. We shall start with Ali's own times and follow the effect of his discourses through the changes and variations in taste, outlook, and mode of thought during different successive ages up to the present day. The companions of Ali, particularly those who had a taste for language and literary grace, greatly admired him as an orator. Abdullah ibn Abbas is one of them. He, as Al-Jahiz points out in his Al-Bayan wal-Tabyin, was a powerful orator. He did not conceal his passion for listening to Ali speak or the enjoyment he derived from it. Once, when Ali was delivering his famous sermon called al-Shakshakiyah, Ibn Abbas was also present. While Ali was speaking, an ordinary man from Kufa handed him a piece of paper containing some questions, thus causing Ali to discontinue his speech. Ali, after reading the sheet of paper, did not continue his speech, in spite of Ibn Abbas urging him to do so. Ibn Abbas later expressed his deep regret on that occasion, saying, "Never in my life was I ever so sorry for interrupting a speech as I was for interrupting this sermon." Referring to a certain letter that Ali had written to Ibn Abbas, the latter used to say, "Except for the speech of the Holy Prophet, I did not derive so much benefit from any utterance as I did from this one."
Even Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, Ali's most contumacious enemy, also acknowledged the Imam's extraordinary eloquence. When Muhkin ibn Abu Muhkin forsook Ali and joined Muawiyah, in order to please Muawiyah, whose heart surged with ill will and bitterness towards Ali, he told him, "I have left the dumbest of men and come to you." The flagrancy of this kind of flattery was so obvious that Muawiyah himself reproached him, saying, "Woe unto you! Do you really call Ali the dumbest of men? Quraysh knew nothing about eloquence before him. It was he who taught them the art of eloquence." Those who heard Ali speaking from the mimbar were very much affected by his words. His sermons made hearts tremble and drew tears from the eyes. Even today, who can hear or read Ali's sermons without a tremor passing through his heart? Sayyid al-Radi, after narrating Ali's famous sermon al-Gharra, says the following: "As Ali delivered his sermon, tears flowed from the eyes of the listeners and hearts quivered with emotion. There came a moment when the power of Ali's words reached its most profound and devastating peak. It was during a gathering of his closest companions when a man named Hamman ibn Shurayh, a man with a heart full of love for Allah and a soul burning with spiritual fire, approached him with a request. Hamman was known for his intense devotion and his yearning for spiritual elevation. He had often listened to Ali's sermons and felt his heart being pulled toward the divine in ways he could not fully articulate. But on this particular day, something inside him had reached a breaking point. He needed more. He needed to understand what it truly meant to be among the pious and the God-fearing. He looked at Ali and said, "O Commander of the Faithful, describe for me the qualities of the pious so clearly that I might see them with my own eyes and feel them in my own heart." Ali looked at him with a gaze that was both loving and cautious. He knew the intensity of Hamman's spirit and understood the danger of feeding such a fire with the full blaze of truth. He said, "Hamman, fear Allah and be patient. Your soul is delicate and your heart is sensitive. The path of the pious is not easy, and its description is not for the faint of heart." Hamman, however, was not satisfied. His longing had become unbearable. He said, "I seek nothing but the truth. I have lived my life in pursuit of it, and I am ready to face whatever it brings." Ali paused. He looked at Hamman and saw a sincerity that could not be denied. He saw a soul that had already been stretched to its limits, a heart that was already reaching for the divine with every fiber of its existence. He said, "Then listen, Hamman, listen carefully. I will describe for you the truly pious." And then Ali began to speak. His voice was calm, but carried a weight that seemed to press against the very air around them. He spoke of the pious as beings of unmatched devotion. He described their nights as hours of prayer, and their days as moments of service. He spoke of how they shed tears in private and wore smiles in public. He described their patience as an ocean that never dried up, and their gratitude as a river that never ceased to flow. He spoke of how their only fear in life was displeasing Allah, and their only hope was in His mercy. Hamman listened with an intensity that was almost frightening. His body trembled, his eyes glowed with the fire of deep contemplation. Ali continued, describing the pious as those who lived in the world but were not of it. He said they saw the world for what it truly was, a fleeting shadow and a temporary dwelling. Their hearts were anchored to the divine. Their minds were focused on the hereafter. They judged themselves more harshly than anyone else could judge them, and they forgave others more generously than anyone could ever forgive them. As Ali spoke, the audience grew silent. The air in the room seemed to thicken. Hamman was utterly captivated.
His entire being seemed to have become a vessel for Ali's words, absorbing each syllable as if it were the very water of life. Ali continued, saying that the pious were those who never allowed the world to distract them from their Lord. Their only comfort was prayer, and their only rest was in the remembrance of Allah. They lived with humility and died with honor. Hamman let out a low, involuntary moan. His breathing became shallow. His hands clutched at his chest as if trying to hold on to something he was losing. Ali noticed this and paused for a moment, but Hamman gestured for him to continue, his eyes pleading, his lips trembling. And so Ali continued, describing the depth of their faith, the steadfastness of their belief, and the purity of their intentions. He said that the pious never turned their backs on the truth, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it was. He said that they were the true inheritors of the prophets, the true upholders of justice, and the true defenders of the oppressed. He spoke of how they loved for Allah and hated for Allah, how they gave for Allah and withheld for Allah, how their entire existence was a reflection of His will.
It was at this moment that Hamman let out a terrible cry. It was not a cry of pain or a cry of fear. It was the cry of a soul that had reached its destination, a soul that had found what it had been searching for its entire life. His body gave way. He collapsed to the ground, trembling uncontrollably, his eyes fixed on a point beyond the ceiling of the mosque. The people around him rushed to his side, calling his name, trying to bring him back. But Hamman was gone. He had left his earthly abode behind. His soul had departed to embrace an everlasting life. His final moments had been spent in the company of truth. His last breath had been drawn while listening to the words of Ali. Ali looked at his fallen companion, and his voice carried both praise and regret as he said, "I feared this would happen. Strange, yet this is how effective admonition affects sensitive hearts." This event became a turning point in the lives of all who witnessed it. The congregation was stunned into silence. Some wept silently, processing the gravity of what they had just seen. Others were struck with a renewed sense of urgency, realizing how easily they too could be swept away by the intensity of Ali's words if they allowed themselves to fully open their hearts. The effect on the broader community was profound. Word of Hamman's death spread like wildfire through the streets of Kufa and eventually throughout the Islamic world. People began to regard Ali's sermons with even greater reverence, approaching each gathering as a potential moment of awakening, a possible encounter with the divine. The scholars who had previously debated the literary merits of Ali's speeches now began to explore their spiritual dimensions. They analyzed how his words had the power to transform lives, to heal broken hearts, to shatter arrogant illusions, and to pull souls toward the deepest forms of devotion.
This moment also reshaped how Ali himself was perceived. He was no longer seen only as a political leader or a military commander. He was seen as a spiritual guide, a beacon of light in an age of confusion. His words became the compass for those seeking salvation and the shelter for those fleeing from the storm of worldly distraction. The companions who were present at Hamman's final moments carried the memory of that event with them for the rest of their lives. They told their children about the power of Ali's words. They described how Hamman had been transformed in an instant, how the truth had entered his heart and refused to leave until his soul had ascended to its source. This story became a lesson for generations to come, demonstrating the sheer force of spiritual authenticity when it finds a receptive heart. It is this element of danger and potential that has kept Nahjul-Balagha alive in the hearts of believers. It is not merely a literary treasure. It is a dynamic force that can reshape the very foundations of a person's existence. The beauty of Ali's words is not static. It moves, it breathes, and it transforms. And just as Hamman was consumed by the fire of truth, so too can any sincere seeker be ignited by the same flame, if only they are willing to listen, to reflect, and to surrender to the reality of what they hear. Beyond Hamman, there were countless others whose lives were quietly changed by Ali's speeches. There were those who walked away from gatherings with tears streaming down their faces, unable to speak for hours afterward. There were those who began to live more simply, more humbly, more devotedly. There were those who entered Ali's presence as kings and left as servants. The words of Ali had a way of stripping away the masks, of exposing the truths that people had hidden even from themselves. He did not preach to the minds alone. He spoke directly to the soul, bypassing defenses, ignoring pretenses, and delivering the message that was needed, not necessarily the one that was wanted.
This is the legacy that Sayyid al-Radi preserved when he compiled Nahjul-Balagha. He did not simply gather fragments of ancient speech. He collected a living force that continues to shape the Islamic consciousness. He captured the voice of a man whose words transcend time, offering guidance for every era and every generation. And while some may approach Nahjul-Balagha as a historical document or a literary artifact, those who truly understand it realize that it is far more. It is a mirror that reflects the state of our own souls. It is a path that leads us from the shadows of ignorance into the full light of awareness. The story of Hamman ibn Shurayh stands as a testament to the profound impact that Ali's words can have. It is a story of longing, devotion, and ultimate surrender. It reminds us that the words of the pious are not empty sounds. They are doorways to the divine. They are invitations to a higher realm, a deeper understanding, a more authentic existence. Those who are willing to listen, truly listen, may find themselves transformed in ways they never imagined, just as Hamman was. And those who close their hearts, fearing the intensity of the truth, may miss the opportunity of a lifetime. Ali's eloquence was not merely an art. It was a mission. It was a calling. He used his words to heal, to guide, and to awaken. He spoke to the broken and brought them comfort. He spoke to the arrogant and shattered their pride. He spoke to the seekers and illuminated their paths. He spoke to the lost and led them home. This is the Nahjul-Balagha that we inherit today. It is a treasure that holds the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 years. It is a guide that leads us through the complexities of life with clarity and purpose. And it is a reminder that the truth, once spoken, never dies. It only waits for the right listener at the right moment to come alive again.
The journey of Nahjul-Balagha is not over. It continues with every new generation that approaches it with sincerity. It continues with every heart that opens to its message. It continues with every soul that, like Hamman, is willing to be consumed by its truth. And perhaps in our own time, in our own ways, we too can be touched by the same flame, moved by the same words, transformed by the same wisdom. The path is open. The words are waiting. The only question is, are we ready to listen?